with or without the aid of Our Lady. Then Robin took his good yew bow in his hand and, placing the tip at his instep, he strung it right deftly. Then he knocked a broadcloth-yard arrow and, raising the bow, drew the grey goose feather to his ear. And next moment the bowstring rang, ding, and the arrow sped down the glade as a sparrow hawk skims in the northern wind. High leaped the noblest heart of all the herd, only to fall dead, reddening the green path with his heart's blood. "Ha!" cried Robin. "How like is that shot, good fellow? I wot the wager were mine, and it were £300. Then all the foresters were filled with rage, and he who had spoken the first and had lost the wager was more angry than all. "Nay," cried he, "the wager's none of thine, and get thee gone straight away, or by all the saints of heaven, I'll baste thy sides until thou wilt never be able to walk again." "Knowest thou not," said another, "that thou hast killed the king's deer? And by the laws of our gracious lord and sovereign King Harry, thine ears should be shaven close to thy head." "Catch him!" cried a third. "Nay," said a fourth, "let him go, because of his tender years." Never a word said Robin Hood, but he looked at the foresters with a grim face. Then, turning on his heel, he strode away from them down the forest glade, not really whistling this time, but his heart was bitterly angry, for his blood was hot and youthful and prone to boil. Now well would it have been for him, for he who'd spoken first, had he left Robin alone. But his anger was hot, both because the youth had gotten the better of him, and because of the deep draughts of ale that he had been quaffing. So of a sudden, without any warning, he sprang to his feet and seized his bow and fitted it to a shaft. "Aye," he cried, "and I'll hurry thine anon," and he sent the arrow whistling after Robin. It was well for Robin Hood that the same forester's head was spinning with ale, or else he would never have taken another step. As it was, the arrow whistled within 3 inches of his head. And then he turned around and quickly drew his own bow and sent an arrow back in return. "Ye said I was no archer," cried he aloud, "but say so now again." The shaft flew straight. The archer fell forward with a cry and lay on his face upon the ground, his arrows rattling about him from out of his quiver, the grey goose shaft wet with his heart's blood. Then, before the others could gather their wits about them, Robin Hood was gone into the depths of the greenwood. Some started after him, but not with much heart, for each feared to suffer the death of his fellow. So presently they all came and lifted the dead man up and bore him away to Nottingham town. Meanwhile, Robin Hood ran through the greenwood. Gone was all the joy and brightness from everything, for his heart was sick within him, and it was borne in upon his soul that he had slain a man. Alas, cried he, thou hast found me an archer that will make thy wife to ring. I would that thou hadst never said one word to me, or that I had never passed thy way, or in that my right forefinger had been stricken off, that this had happened. In haste I smote, but grieve I saw at leisure. And then, even in his trouble, he remembered the old saw that what is done, and the egg cracked cannot be cured. And so he came to dwell in the greenwood that was to be his home for many a year to come, never again to see the happy days with the lads and lasses of sweet Locksley town. For he was outlawed, not only because he had killed a man, but also because he had poached upon the king's deer, and £200 was set upon his head as reward for whoever would bring him to the court of the king. Now, the Sheriff of Nottingham swore to that he himself would bring this knave Robin Hood to justice for 2 reasons. First, because he wanted the £200, and next, because the forester that Robin Hood had killed was kin to him. But Robin Hood lay hidden in Sherwood Forest for 1 year, and in that time were gathered around him many others like himself, cast out from other folk for this curse, for this cause, and for that. Some had shot deer in hungry winter time, when they could get no other food, and had been seen in the act by the foresters, but had escaped, thus saving their ears. Some of them had been turned in Sherwood Forest. Some had been despoiled by a great baron or a rich abbot or a powerful esquire. All, for one cause or another, had come to Sherwood Forest to escape a strong oppression. So in all that year, 50 or more good stout yeomen gathered about Robin Hood and chose him to be their leader and chief. Then they vowed that, even as they themselves had been despoiled, that they would despoil their oppressors, whether baron or abbot or connigget or squire, and that from each they would take that which had been wrung from the poor by unjust taxes, or land rents, or wrongful fines. But to the poor folk they would give a helping hand in need and trouble, and would return to them that which had been unjustly taken from them. Beside this, they swore never to harm a child, nor to wrong a woman, be she maid or wife or widow, so that after a while, when the people began to find that no harm was meant to them, but that money or food came in time of want to many a poor family, they would come to praise Robin and his merry men, and to tell many tales like this one of him and of his doings in Sherwood Forest, for they felt him to be one of themselves.